Hello, and thanks for checking out Missed Meals and Cold Coffee. I'm Chef Lethal, and I've had some mild success on the internet as a live streamer, so I thought I'd bring those talents and my own life experiences to chat with you about parenthood. I'll cover topics ranging from infertility to the adoption process, while hopefully having some fun in the meantime. Now, before we get into the episode, my legal team has prepared the following disclaimer.
This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Any medical advice or information given by the host, Chef Lethal, or any of his guests should not be taken seriously or acted upon without the express consent of an actual medical professional. Please call your doctor if you experience an erection lasting longer than 4 hours, as this may be an unintended side effect. Please follow Chef Lethal on Twitter at Chef Lethal Plays and on Twitch at twitch.tv/Chef Lethal Plays.
Now, with that out of the way, on to the show. Hello and welcome back. Chef Lethal here, coming at you with another one. Missed Meals and Cold Coffee, show number 9. We made it to show number 9. Consistently every week, which is incredible. I never would have thought I could do that. But what do you know? I can be consistent for at least 9 weeks when it's only one thing a week. Oof, even then, we got kind of close there for a minute. But one thing I've been thinking about since this is the 9th show, and you know, if you've been following along for these 8 episodes into this 9th one, and if you haven't, what kind of animal are you listening to the 9th episode first? Like, come on, what's wrong with you? Who does that? Really? But you know, going through like making these show notes and actually going through the recording, it brings up a lot of feelings and emotions. You know, I got to think about these experiences, some of them not always very simple or, you know, easy to digest. And just lately I've just been feeling like it's kind of weighing heavy on me. So I just want to take this opportunity and, you know, here we are before we get to the 10th episode. I gotta get you guys here, and I need to get something off of my chest. So there we go. I feel so much better. If you're listening to Spotify, that's what we call a visual gag. You'll have to go to YouTube to see what I did. I'm such a goof, but I'm feeling pretty good. It is Saturday, the 23rd of January, believe it or not, but by the time you listen to this, we will be in early February. So happy February. Hopefully the rest of 2021, the rest of January wasn't too bad. Nothing disastrous happening. Of course, there's only 8 days left, so hopefully by the time that we listen to this, the world hasn't ended. That would be kind of awkward. So today, episode 9, we're going to be talking about our experience at the hospital leading up to the moment of birth. And you might be thinking, Chef, that seems pretty lame. Like, you just go to the hospital and have your baby, right? Well, let me tell you, this is probably going to be another kind of long one, unless I can edit myself live, which is not usually one of my strong suits. But I was writing up notes for this. I'm like, oh shoot, this one's going to be a juicy one, because a lot happens, especially in our situation, of course, because nothing could possibly be easy with us when it came to this baby. So, a few weeks ago we talked about the baby shower. Last week we talked about approaching the day of birth, and now we're kind of talking about like the last moments, assuming that there are no emergencies. And let me just throw that out there. And speaking of throwing it out there, we got to do the housekeeping and caveats, of course. So of course, as usual, we're live on Twitch right now, twitch.tv/Chef Lethal Plays. There is no schedule, but I'm thinking Saturday afternoons might be the right time for me. So Saturday, anytime between like probably 2 and 4 p.m. I might start. Seems like this is a pretty decent time, and I might even be able to get in and edit the episode right after I finish, which would be swell, or at least do it on Sunday. If you do join the Twitch chat, there is if you're not familiar with Twitch, there is a chat function, but while I'm streaming the podcast, I want, with the exception of the visual gag today, I like the show to be relatively equal between how you digest it or ingest it. So if you're listening to the audio only, you're not missing out on any chat that happens and wondering what am I responding to. So if you're in chat live and you're chatting with me, I may say hi, I may not, but it's really just there for the people that are listening to talk about it, or if you have any questions come up about what I said that you might help contribute to the show, I'll see it then. Of course, we have the other socials, Twitter, Instagram. Check me out there. Chef Lethal Plays as usual. And then the YouTube channel is youtube.com/c/Chef Lethal Plays, which is a lot of words to say. So just go to YouTube/Chef Lethal and search Chef Lethal. My brain is moving too slowly for the words that I want to say. And it'll come right up. And there's a bunch of other junk on my channel. Don't watch that other stuff. Just watch the podcast. I think I might have some old cooking videos on there, like from my Twitch cooking show. But anyway, and then as usual with the show here, I'm going to be using the husband and wife terminology, just because it's easier to say that. So if you're listening to this and I say, guys, go and support your woman in the hospital, but maybe you're not a guy, maybe whatever, but just go with it. Okay. Just pretend. It helps me because I have a little monkey brain, and I gotta stay on track. And the big one here is that this story, especially up to this point, this whole story has obviously been my experience, our experience as a lethal family. But with this one in particular, and next week as well, this is just strictly our experience. It may align closely to somebody else's, or even 1 in a billion chance that they have the exact same experience. But this is really just what happened to us, to kind of give you an idea of what can happen, I suppose. Your mileage may vary if you're going through pregnancy, or you can compare my story to yours if you've already had children. I did fail to mention Ko-fi.com/cheflethal. So ko-fi.com/cheflethal. If you want to chuck $1 a face, it will definitely go towards my coffee fund, which is running low. So getting into the story here, as has been abundantly clear through these 8 weeks so far, we had our own issues with infertility and just high riskness and things. So we had to go through pregnancy. Like, we knew going into having the baby that Mrs. Lethal was going to have to be induced. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's okay. I certainly didn't. And I'll get to the actual kind of like semi-definition of what it means here in a little bit. But typically with a higher risk pregnancy, doctors like to induce their patients, induce their pregnant women, because it helps maintain a little bit of extra control. I don't want to say it's fully controlled, but they can basically, you can schedule when you have your baby. It's not 100%, like they may say, you're going to be induced on January 23rd, and you might be in the hospital for a few days, but it's what starts the process. So then in the off chance, or just the chance that anything does kind of get a little fishy or kind of go wrong, you're already in the hospital. So for us, because Mrs. Lethal had a history of blood clots, and when you're pregnant as well, blood pressure is a really, really big deal. And we were monitoring that, and at times her blood pressure was a little high. So we had to be induced. So the doctor wanted us in the hospital when when it starts to go down, just in case something happens with a clot or her blood pressure goes crazy. We were already there, and I think that's one of the big safeguards in regards to doing it. It's not just you're waiting at home until your contractions are starting and then you're flying to the hospital and something can go wrong on the way to the hospital. Not saying that I would ever want that to happen to anybody, but life is weird. Things happen, and those types of things definitely do happen. So our original due date was October 4th, 2020. And as I mentioned, the doctor wanted us, we were going to be induced. So the doctor wanted us to come in a little bit sooner. So she wanted us to come in like a week beforehand or a few days before, just because of the risk factors. And then as we were kind of getting closer, they advised Mrs. Lethal to like go check your blood pressure every day. We had an at-home cuff that we bought that was kind of accurate, but then we just go up to the Publix, to the Hagee machine or whatever, like they had blood pressure machine in the grocery store. For those of you who don't know what Publix is, but then she'd go up to there and get her blood pressure, and just felt like it was a little bit more accurate. So it started trending kind of high, and so the doctor was like, "No, you're going to have to come in sooner than we were originally planning, just because that it was a little on the iffy side." So going back to induction. If you don't know, if you're uninitiated into the world of induction, it's a cooktop that's magnetic, and it only gets hot. I'm just kidding. That is an actual thing, an induction burner, but we're not talking cooking. We're talking babies. So basically, to be induced means to manually start the labor process. So I'm pretty sure we're all aware, contractions start, and that's kind of the body telling you and telling the baby, like, here we go, it's happening. But if it's sooner than than it's supposed to be, you need some help. And it's basically they give you medicine to help that process get started. It's not instant, and of course everybody's different, but it's a process, and it can be kind of long and very uncomfortable, because you're at the hospital, okay? And spoiler alert, when you're out in the hospital, even under normal circumstances, like if you broke your leg or something, they're going to be checking on you a lot. But when you're having a baby and you're being induced, they're in there all the time, at all hours of the day and night, with no regard to your personal feelings or anything. They are in there to do a job, and they need that baby to get out of you safely. They're not just going to go in there and rip it out with a pair of tongs or anything. That was a violent image that I just had in my head. Wow. Okay. But they come in and they have different, like, basically like Bosu balls, like physio balls, that women can help, just do things, exercises or whatever to help kind of get the body going. So again, there is medicine involved to get that process started, but until the body is ready to accept the medicine, is the best way I can really describe it, then you're just kind of sitting in the hospital room waiting. Well, that's why they have the ball, so you can bounce, and that's supposed to help. Not like bounce like you're jumping up and down, but just a light, kind of bobbing. It kind of helps, push things along a little bit. So once we got to the hospital, and we did do a test run prior to going to the hospital, we did a few weeks earlier, and it happens to be right nearby one of the best taco spots that we have and we love. So we just used that as an excuse to get some delicious tacos that day. But so we took the test run. So when it came time, and this is another thing about being induced, you're not rushing to get to the hospital. Like, we had an appointment, just like any other doctor's appointment, except that it was at 2 a.m. That was the main difference. But you're not flying down the highway with your wife in the passenger seat breathing, and you're trying to hold her hand and yell, "What? Breathe! Remember to breathe!" No, you're just driving, So that was probably the biggest benefit, I think, is that for us anyway, like superficially, that it wasn't an emergency. You just get to go. So yeah, we had to get there at like 2 a.m. and we still had to wait. So we had this appointment, but they were still like, "Yeah, we're waiting on a room." Like, what? Then why'd you have us come? So we waited for like an hour at least. Like, why did you have us come so early if you didn't have a room ready? But I mean, it's kind of like at a restaurant where you go and they tell you that your table's going to be ready in 20 minutes, and then it's not ready for 30 minutes because people take longer to eat or whatever. They just go off their estimate. So they just estimate that the room's going to be ready. And then, especially with COVID, they probably had to clean it extra, like, I'm sure. I mean, it's a hospital. I don't know. Anyway, so we went to. I think I'm allowed to say where we went to, but it's place because it's just Orlando. I mean, we're in Orlando, greater Orlando area, and we have Winnie Palmer Hospital here, which is like one of, if not the best baby hospitals in Florida. I want to say possibly the country, but it's definitely like top notch. So we had a nice room, and because of COVID, again, I was the only person that was allowed to come along, and we had to wear masks the whole time, and yeah, all the nurses, of course, wearing masks. But yeah, once we got there and we get in the room, it was a whole mix of emotions. By this point, I was ready, right? I was excited, and but no matter how ready you think you are, just like with kind of any big thing, when you get married, you're excited to get married, but you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you know what's going to happen. Hopefully, the lady says yes, or whatever you say, I do. But it's a big change in your life, big change in our life. So yes, I was excited, but I was also scared. Like, what do you do? What are we doing? We're at the hospital. I'm nervous. My knees are weak. I got spaghetti on my shirt. Like, I don't even know what's happening. Um, Mom's spaghetti, of course, but you know, so they do a lot there to help kind of ease you and describe kind of what's happening and keep you in the loop. But it's still like it's the final step. I mean, clearly, obviously, it's the final step before the baby comes. So it's like, well, here we go. There's no turning back now. Um, and I'll say that I think it's because, especially because Mrs. Lethal was induced, this next thing reigns true. But I think even if you just have a normal, non-induced pregnancy, but be ready to be prodded, poked, things happen to you that are uncomfortable. And guys in the room, you will see things. You're gonna see things. Maybe you wish you hadn't seen them, but you're gonna see them. But the one thing I can say about that, and I think it's later in my notes, but I'll just say it now as well. But pay attention, guys. Support people, whoever. When you're in the room and the nurses are telling you something, or if they're performing a procedure on the pregnant woman, pay attention to what's happening. If you can't watch it for squeamish reasons, that's fine. I say squeamish because I don't mean like there's blood and guts everywhere, but just, you know, because I don't know, it can be kind of weird to see certain things. But pay attention to what's happening. Like, one example I want to say is they gave Mrs. Lethal at one point a certain medicine. I forget what it was for, but they gave her a medicine, and then later, like either the next day or something, one of the other nurses had asked, like Nurse B asked Nurse A, "Oh, did they give Mrs. Lethal this, medicine A?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Let me check the chart." But I already knew. I was like, "Yeah, they already gave that to her yesterday at whatever 1 a.m." And just pay attention for stuff like that, and you'll not only get brownie points with your wife, but it will make the nurses' jobs a little bit easier if you're engaged and not just in the way or feeling like you're checked out. We watched a bunch of videos before going to the hospital about like what to expect at the hospital, and it was nothing like this podcast. This podcast is way better than those other videos. But one of the people that we watched was an actual like labor and delivery nurse, and she said one of her biggest pet peeves is when the guy's in there, the husband, whoever, and he's in there and they're like telling the lady, like, the woman, the pregnant lady, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to give you this and then this is going to happen and this has happened. And the whole time the guy's just like on his phone, playing a game or reading Twitter or whatever. So put the phone down, listen to the dang nurse, for crying out loud. So when you're being induced, you get to go to a special holding room, usually, for us anyway. Again, this is our experience. Great hospital. If you have to give birth in a less great hospital, your experience might not be just like this, but for us, we got a special like pre-delivery room. It had a Murphy bed and a hospital bed and a chair and a TV, and it was great. This is why it's important to have phone chargers. Have all of your electronics charged from the beginning, but then also bring your chargers and stuff, because odds are you're gonna need it if you're in there for any amount of time, even if it's just a few hours. But we were in there for a couple of days. I think we had 2 nights in there before we went down to labor and delivery. So yeah, we needed our phones for entertainment because the TV was no bueno. We even brought our Roku, but there was no internet or something. I can't remember why we couldn't use it, but we couldn't use it. So we had to rely on our telephones, which, no big deal. I don't even remember if we watched anything. I was, whatever we did. The whole time Mrs. Lethal was like in uncomfortable pain, and I don't want to say pain, but she was in uncomfortable situations the whole time anyway. So we just kind of did what we could to make her comfortable. Yeah. So with Winnie Palmer, they have room service that you get to order, and they have a menu, and the menu looks great. Like, I was blown away by this menu. I was like, dang, this is awesome. And the pregnant woman gets to order whatever she wants, whenever she wants. She could have 3 meals if she wanted, but each meal was like a meal, like a lot of food. And the guest would have to generally pay, I think, like $5, which is a steal considering the amount of food. But I will say this: it was aggressively mediocre. It was aggressively mediocre, which doesn't even make sense, which goes to show you just how plain it was. Like it was fine, you know, it was better than nothing for sure, and it was cheap. So I mean that was doubly good. But man, it was just like good. Like the last day that we were there, we got Chick-fil-A, and it was like my taste buds didn't know what to do. It was like flavor. It was awesome. But anyway, so yeah, the room service situation was good, and the Murphy bed was kind of nice because it gave me somewhere to sleep and not just have to sit in a chair, which the chairs there are not very comfortable. They are like recliner style, but they weren't very user friendly, I'll say. But the Murphy bed was okay. I usually just left it down and just took little naps when I could. But naps were difficult to come by because nurses were constantly coming in, and there were a few times where nurses would come in like in the middle of the night. You know, it's a hospital; they come in whenever they want to. They'd come in the middle of the night, but for whatever reason, like my husband's sense was tingling, my chef's sense was tingling, and I would wake up every time. Not because they woke me up, because I can sleep through darn near anything. I like ask Mrs. Lethal. I sleep like a freaking, I don't even know. I used to say sleep like a baby, but we have a baby, and I think we need to amend that statement. But I'll sleep through pretty much anything. But just whatever reason, my husband's sense went off, and I would always wake up when the nurses came in because I wanted to pay attention. And that's what I'm talking about with the guys, to pay attention to what's happening. You know, it could have been so easy for me to just lay there and just pretend like I was sleeping, or actually just still be asleep. But my senses went off, and I woke up, and I wanted to make sure I was there and I was paying attention, because even though I'm not the one physically having the baby, that's still my baby, and that's my wife. At nothing else, that's my wife. I want to know what's happening to her, you know, what to expect, and that way, if she's in the throes of something happening that the nurse described to her, you know, I would have been paying attention to know that, oh, okay, yeah, the nurse said that would happen, even if she forgot because she's in the middle of, you know, a painful contraction or whatever is happening. At least I'm not the one in pain, and I have a clear enough head to remember things that happened. So this situation would be a lot different if you didn't get induced or you're not getting induced. I don't know what that situation is. Maybe you go straight to labor and delivery, or maybe you're in a waiting room for only a little bit of time. But for us, we were in this room for a couple of days. It's also very important. I think I may have touched on this last week about like packing your bags, but pack snacks, things that are easy to eat. You know, don't bring sandwiches or anything like that because you'll have mediocre food. Or usually, you know, at the very least, hospitals have cafes. But snacks were super important. Try to do, if you can, like high-ish, like protein bars are great because protein has a high satiety rate. So you will stay fuller a little bit longer if you had a protein bar versus if you just had a bag of chips. If you had something that had some fiber in it, like Fiber One bars were pretty good. So I packed a bunch of protein bars, I think Fiber One bars, and stay hydrated. It is so important to try to remember to stay hydrated. It's ultra important for the woman to stay hydrated because she needs those fluids to help. I mean, just to help everything. I mean, the baby's taking so many nutrients, but also it just helps the process to have a healthy body, to, you know, for when the process to start, you're not dehydrated, which can slow things down. And but for the guy, for the man there, it's equally, I don't want to say equally, but it's near as important to stay hydrated because you don't want to get faint, you know, at a time where you're needed because, you know, you hadn't been drinking water, or, you know, you don't want to not feel good because, you know, something as avoidable as just drinking a cup of water every couple hours, you know. So just drink your water. Bring, you know, Mio drops or whatever to flavor it up and spice it up. Maybe not so much for the pregnant woman, but for the guy, at least you can have, you know, things in your water because you don't have to worry about nutrients and things getting down to the baby. And then I'll say that since we were there for a few days, we were getting stir crazy. Even if, I mean, Was that a thought? I don't even know what just happened. My brain stopped working. But just being in a room in general is going to make me stir crazy. It's going to make both of us stir crazy. But because we were also pregnant and we're waiting on a baby, and we couldn't go anywhere. They don't let you go anywhere. I could go out if I needed to, but she couldn't move. She was basically stuck in the room. And they said if you want to, you can get up and walk around like the hallway. We can come get you and walk around, but generally, you got to stay in the room. Like, dang, that kind of sucks, but it's what it is. Especially again with COVID. And it was a pain. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about this, but it was a little bit of a pain for me to leave. Like one time I left to call my mother-in-law to give her an update on what was happening. But every time you go back in, you've got to go through the metal detectors. You got to get your temperature checked, and they got to ask you the questionnaire of, do you have a fever or any COVID symptoms? Have you been in contact with anybody? I'm like, I was just here. I just walked. You just saw me walk out. I was gone for 10 minutes, but whatever. They got to do what they got to do. I can't be mad at the hospital staff for doing their job. And lastly, on that point, not the going outside part, but about being in the room, is remember the birthing plan. Kind of have an idea of what your wife is expecting to happen, or what you two are expecting to happen. If you want to postpone a C-section until the last possible moment, that's a thing you need to remember. Or if your wife is adamant about not having a what's it called, epidural, if she's adamant about that, and like she does like a Dumbledore thing where she's like, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, don't let me get an epidural, and in your Harry Potter sitting there like, okay, just keep drinking that fountain water, lady. You need to remember that, and you need to stand firm and tell the nurses, tell whoever, like, no, you said. But at the same time, there's likely going to be a point where you've got to use your own emotional intelligence. And if she says something like that, and it's, down to the money, and she just can't, but again, at a certain point, they can't do it. Like if your baby's crowning, they're not going to put an epidural in. They're just going to say, sorry, you lost it, lady. Let's go. They don't want to risk the baby going back. Anyway, so we were in that room for a long time, and just going crazy with interruptions. And at a certain point, you reach the end of the internet. It's kind of like, okay, I've done all the doom scrolling I can. Trump hasn't tweeted in a few hours, so everything's okay. But all this while, she's on medicine, and nurses are coming in to check her, and nurses are coming in to help her, be mobile and do certain things. And, the medicine's doing what it's supposed to do. It took a while. I feel like it took longer than we were expecting. We had loose expectations just from what we read and saw in research for this. But I still feel like it was like, dang, man, this is a long time. It was slow for us, and everyone's going to be different. I know I said that at the caveat at the top, but I still feel like I need to say it, that everyone's different. Like, you may be needing to be induced. You get your your indudo. No, that comes afterwards. No, you get the induction medicine. I forget what it's called. But you get it, and within a few hours, maybe things are moving along, and you're getting ready. But ours was a few days. I feel like it's, especially if it's your first kid, once your innards have been blessed with life previously, it's the process is generally a lot easier. So after the medicine was kind of doing its thing, and she was reaching a point where we were pretty much, we were getting ready for D-Day, I don't know what to call it, or B time. The nurses came in, they checked her up and said, okay, this feels about right. So go ahead and pack up your stuff, and we'll let you know when we have a room ready for you. So we were in the pre-room, basically the waiting for the world to change room. And then there's labor and delivery, and that's where they have all of the medical equipment, and that's where it happens. So we were told to pack up and get ready to move out. 2 hours later, uh, it's like, okay, you told us to pack up 2 hours ago, and we've been sitting here kind of like, and at this point, this is like the only 2 hour stretch that no nurses came in the room. It was the only time we were left alone. We're like, where is it? First of all, where is everybody? Second of all, why would you tell us to pack up and then make us sit here and wait? And it was torture. It was like, what are we doing? Can I unpack? I need my charger. Where are my snacks? And everything is like, before we left the house to go to the hospital, Mrs. Lethal had her bags packed like very specifically, especially her bag. It was like, okay, on this side it's, pajamas. On this side of the bag it's this and that. On this pocket it's baby stuff. In this pocket it's my stuff, and it was very organized. But by the time we got down to labor and delivery, it was just a jambalaya of junk, because I was in charge of getting the bag together, because they had to transfer her. Well, she was in the hospital bed, so it just became, here's your bag. And then she would ask me for something down in the room, and she'd be like, okay, it's in the left front corner pocket. And I'd go like, no, it's not. Chef was here. I moved it, and I'd have to go digging and then make the situation even worse. But whatever, that's the least of your concerns. So you just gotta be patient. I mean, that's why they call you a patient when you're at the hospital, because you have to be patient. Did I do that right? I think I did. Okay. So after we finally get visited upon by the nursing staff, we get taken down to labor and delivery. So they load up Mrs. Lethal in a wheelchair, which makes you feel so able-bodied, and they take us down the hall to the labor and delivery room, where all of the comforts from the pre-waiting room are gone. There is no Murphy bed. There is no artwork on the walls. I'm going to quote unquote artwork on the walls. I take that back. There was something behind the hospital bed in the labor room, but it was like something you'd find in a hotel room, like a big like flower or something like that. But it held behind it was like a false wall. So they would lift it up, and there was like an alcove in there where they could reach and put medical equipment and stuff. It's kind of cool. So in the room, they have the hospital bed, which wasn't even as good of a hospital bed for Mrs. Lethal as the one in the other room. It was like from 1992, but the one in the other room was from 2002. So it was a little bit different. It wasn't as good. It was squeakier, less comfortable. Like, it just wasn't good. And for me, let me tell you, not only do I not get a Murphy bed, they have this recliner in there, and a lounger, whatever you want to call it. And it was so uncomfortable. Like, it would only recline, let's say 40, less than 40, like 40 degrees. Like, it was just, and it was a tough recline. So it wasn't just like I'm reclining. It was like you had to put work into it, and then you had to put work into it to stay reclined. So it was like an active, like isometric hold while you're trying to relax. Now, let me be clear. I did not have a baby growing inside of me. So an uncomfortable chair was a small price to pay, considering my wife had been uncomfortable for 9 months. However, I feel like Mrs. Lethal showed me a meme one time of a stereotypical labor and delivery room, and there was the lounger. So if you've been in the labor room for your wife or whatever, you probably know what chair I'm talking about. It must be the hospital standard. It's the worst. Anyway, so they hooked up Mrs. Lethal to all the monitors and gadgets and stuff, and so they can monitor. It's really kind of cool. They monitor her and they monitor the baby, so they can monitor her heartbeat and blood pressure and stuff in real time. And then they also have our baby hooked up to the monitors as well, so they can check to make sure that the baby's breathing okay and her heart's beating and all this stuff. It's pretty neat. But again, more waiting, lots of waiting. So then the time came for the epidural, and this is where I was completely out of reality with epidural. So let me tell you a story. Whenever I had first heard about epidurals, like however many years ago, decade ago, however long, I don't know, it's been a long time, from television shows or whatever, they always say it's a needle in your back and it hurts. It's a needle in your back and it hurts. And ever since then, I've had this image in my head that it's like The Matrix, where they jack you in. If you've never seen The Matrix, I'm very sorry, but you need to watch The Matrix. But like, I had this vision that it was this like monster needle that they jam in your spine, and it's like, you know, and then they jack you full of medicine and you're happy dory. But it's nothing like that. It was like this tiny little copper wire, thin copper wire, like you'd see like in an electrical box or something. It was so tiny, and it just goes right in, shoop. And from what she told me, it was uncomfortable, but like she was fine. Like she just, I think, squinched a little bit when they did it, but that was it. You know, and they tape it down. It's flush. Like it's basically an IV into your spine, but it's through this little tiny little flexible cord, and it just went in. They tape it down, and that was it. So it was nothing like I had in my head, thank God, because that would have been horrendous. And then, so there are, and this is another thing I didn't know, and maybe you don't know either, but there are two types of epidurals. There's epidural number A, which is called the walking epidural, which is garbage. It's like the diet epidural. It's the Bud Light of epidurals. And I don't remember exactly what the purpose of it is, but it's something that kind of helps numb some feeling, but you can still walk. Okay, and we started with the walk. So what they say is, you know, we're not going to tell you what you can and can't do as far as the epidural goes, but what we recommend is we go ahead and get you on the walking one early, so your body has time to acclimate to that, and then as we get closer to time, then we hit the button for the good stuff. And that's when they hit the fentanyl. The fentanyl, you know that word. And that's what is the good stuff. And it's like no longer walking epidural. It is the you're stuck in the labor room until you have this baby epidural. And checking in on Twitch chat, Rapak, what is going on, man? Notice the icon next to your name. Welcome to the new VIP. So going into, you know, so she's hooked up to all the monitors and gadgets and stuff, and we're sitting there, and it was almost like instantaneously, almost all of the research and videos and classes that we did vanished from my brain's existence. I will say though, some of the stuff I did retain, and some of it was useful. There's a lot of information that is given in videos and classes that you're recommended to take in order, you know, to be ready for child. But one of the things that I would recommend really trying to stick with is the information about contractions. Now, the nurses will tell you what to expect as far as timings and what to look for, cues. But if you can go into it knowing what you're looking for, it's going to help you out. Okay. So I didn't remember most of what we watched, but I did remember some stuff about contractions. And of course, phones, you can always look it up if you want to while you're in the hospital. But you know, so we were able to, and of course she's hooked up to the monitor, so we can actually see the contractions happening on the monitor, which I thought was really, that's what really solidified it for me as far as understanding the process. Because yes, I remembered a little bit, but I could tell based on the waves on the monitor that she was hooked up to, and what she would tell me, like, you know, she would say, "Oh, I'm having a contraction," and she'd squeeze my hand, and she's like, "Okay, that wasn't so bad." And then I would look at the monitor, and it was like a little bump, or she was like, "Oh, this is a big one," and it was like a bigger bump, you know. And then as we get closer and closer, those bumps start to get pretty wild and faster. And then something that really surprised me as we're getting closer, what really surprised me was the quickness that we went from, wow, these contractions are getting kind of uncomfortable, to holy crap, it's happening. It happened so fast. And it wasn't even like, wow, it felt like it happened really quickly. It did. It not only felt that way, but it was that way. And that was the craziest thing, because, you know, it's just like, okay, contractions. Oh my God, I'm dying. And there's another thing. The epidural we're guessing it helped because she didn't necessarily feel pain, but she felt a lot of pressure. And these nurses, God bless them. I mean, really, what they do is incredible. But they're asking all these questions like, does it hurt? How does that feel? Are you in pain? And it's like, Mrs. Lethal is in the middle of contraction. You're asking her that. Just shut up. I know you mean well, but you need to shut up right now. I'm trying to focus on this pain that I'm going through. But it's not pain, it's pressure. And then it asks, is it pain or is it pressure? She's like, I don't know. She didn't say that, but that's what she was thinking. And we had that conversation later. Like, what are you talking to me for? I'm going through it right now. But since she's hooked up on the monitor and then the nurse's station has access to her stuff as well. So as we were getting closer to holy crap, it's happening time, it's like our main nurse came in, she saw the monitor and she said, oh yes, we'll be right back. And then it was like, zoom, the whole medical staff convened and descended upon us. And it was like, okay, it's go time. And it was crazy. There were so many people in there by the end of it. And I'm going to obviously spare some details because one, some of it I blacked out for, but two, I mean, we were in labor, active labor for about an hour. From the time where the doctors were telling her, okay, now you need to push, we were there for about an hour. It was horrible. It was horrible in that it was a lot of work for Mrs. Lethal. And they tell you this as well in the classes and videos and stuff for the guys. And this is why it's important to remain hydrated, because I'm also feeling a rush. It's like, this is happening. My baby's coming and I'm getting endorphins and adrenaline, and you got to be, and I'm holding on for dear life for my wife so she can squeeze me as hard as she can to help get her through these contractions. And you don't want to pass out during that. And it's like my heart's racing and beating and I'm excited. And, the blood's high, right? So it's like, you got to be ready for that. It absolutely happens. Obviously not to the extent of the woman who is producing a child, but it happens for the guys too. You're gonna feel like craziness is happening, because it is. Going into the actual delivery process, though, Mrs. Lethal had to fast, and since we were in labor and delivery for a long time, by the time the baby came, she had been fasting for about 24 hours. Now, for those of you who are horrible at math, that's a day. That is a full day that she didn't eat. So you can bet your bottom that when it came time that she was allowed to eat, she was ravenous. And then she got some of that aggressively mediocre food, and it almost tasted good to her. That's how hungry she was. But anything can happen when it's happening. Since we were pushing for so long, like by the time we started pushing, like other women had their babies and were leaving. We could hear them and they'd like, they'd scream for 3 seconds and it's like, oh, baby's out. And then they leave. Like, it's like, man, we've been here for an hour. 3 women have already had their baby. It's crazy. But no, it happens. And people have, for me telling this story, I'm sure somebody might be out there and think, wow, only an hour, lucky you. But for us, it felt like an eternity, especially for Ms. Lethal, because by the end of it, once her hormones, raging hormones calm down after the birth, like the first thing that hits is starving. She was starving. But anyway, back to the heat of the moment, while you're in the throes of contractions and pushing and, anything can happen, good or bad. And it's tough to talk about the bad stuff, but things happen. And I'm not going to talk about the bad stuff. Nothing bad happened for us. But you need to be prepared that something could happen. We got to a point near the end of the labor where we thought we might have to go in, not the labor itself, but like in that time between, wow, these contractions are getting uncomfortable and holy crap, it's happening. Right before the wow, these contractions are uncomfortable, it was getting to a point where we were being considered, like our nurses were coming in to prepare us for the consideration that we might have to have a C-section. And that was one of those things where it's like, not even last case scenario, like what's after the last case scenario, then we can do it. We were going to have that baby no matter what. We would do whatever it takes, but we absolutely didn't want to do that. The recovery time for a normal, like natural birth is, a few days, maybe a week. I'd say probably a week on average before you're able to like kind of get back to normal-ish. But for a C-section, you're out for multiple weeks, many of them bedridden because it's a major surgery. You're taking out, in our case, an almost, a 7.5 pound baby. That's a major surgery and you need time to recover, especially it's your abdomen and, use your abs for everything. So luckily that didn't come for us. We didn't need to do that. Hallelujah. But like those words were coming out like, we might have to do that. But again, thank goodness we didn't have to. Another thing that I put is you will like it. So if you thought things were uncomfortable and weird in the pre-room, wait till you're in labor. You will absolutely see things that you were not expecting to see, or maybe you hadn't planned on seeing, and you're just going to have to go with it because it's part of the life-giving process. And originally my plan was to remain at Mrs. Lethal's head level, because I didn't want to see anything happening. But you know what happens in the middle of it? The doctor was telling me, like, come over here and hold your wife's leg. I was like, okay. And I'm over here holding her leg with one arm and holding her hand with the other, and helping her push through. So things happen, and you got to go with it. And the doctor that ended up giving birth was kind of aggressive. Like she was not the normal doctor. Like she wasn't Mrs. Lethal's normal doctor, but she was kind of mean. Not like super mean, but like she was very stern. Like, no, you need to get back here and do this. I'm like, dang, okay. Anyway, so that hour flew by. It was all active time, so it's not like we were just like all of the other time in the hospital where you're just sitting around and waiting. Hurry up and wait. No, this was hurry up because it's happening. And so, time flew. It's like, boom, okay, we're starting, and you don't have time to look at your phone to see what time it is. You don't have time to do anything. You're focused on bringing this baby into the world, which is super cool, which I never knew. But what's crazy is, so after that hour of pushing, oh man, you know what? You're gonna have to wait till next week. Actually, I planned that all along. Where today's episode was only going to be up until the point of birth, but now we're there. Our baby is being born. So you're going to have to wait till next week. Speaking of next week, before that time, go follow me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Twitch, Discord, MySpace. I don't care. Just do it. That's another thing I don't plug near enough. Is our Discord server. So discord.gg/lethalgastropub will get you to my Discord server for my small little community that we have here from Twitch, where we just hang out and we talk about random things occasionally. A lot of times it's pretty quiet in there, but a bunch of chill people in there where we just hang out, and a bunch of cool guys and gals in there. So come hang out if you want to. Twitch.tv/ChefLethalPlays. We are live right now. We are winding down. But I imagine eventually I'll get back into doing some game streams. Hopefully. I don't think cooking streams are in the future or anytime soon, but definitely gaming would be a lot easier to do for me in my current situation. The YouTube channel, just go to YouTube and search for Chef Lethal. It'll be a lot easier that way. Same for Instagram, Twitter, Chef Lethal Plays, Ko-fi it's ko-fi.com, Ko-fi.com/Chef Lethal if you want to chuck $1 at my face. Maybe towards the haircut fund or the coffee fund, whatever. But yeah, so next week you're gonna have to download the show next week because I'm going to be finishing up this epic tale of human birth. Yeah, because I've always planned since the inception of the podcast that this was going to be a two-parter because I knew that our time at the hospital was long and lots of different moving pieces, including the baby. But anyway, as always, this is Chef Lethal signing off, wishing you a full plate and the freshest, hottest coffee that you can muster.